Welcome to LoTech Tuesdays by LoTech and Wild, the podcast for people who live their lives unplugged and for those who want to.
All right. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
So my name is Christian McConnell. I live here in Denver, Colorado. I work for Lowa Boots. I've been doing that for a little over 11 years now. Got about a 13-year climbing history. I'm also very involved in playing music. I like to brew beer. I kind of like to do a little bit of everything.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah. What instruments do you play?
I play guitar and bass, and in the last few years, I've gotten into DJing and have made like a pretty amazing friend group here in the Denver area as a result of that.
Oh, neat. I was just looking actually at a DJ app for so you do the old school like Techniques vinyl kind of?
No, I do not. I have one of those digital standalone players that I use.
Okay.
I feel like I missed the bus on vinyl as far as collecting and learning those techniques.
Yeah. Well, I think so. For me, the reason that I downloaded the app, it's for an iPad, but you can use it on your iPhone too, is just to make like hosting a party easier, which is what I want to be able to do at like the Valdez Ice Climbing Festival and the Valdez Fat Bike Bash, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your climbing resume. 13 years. It's a long time.
Yeah, I started climbing at a climbing gym in New Jersey. It was right down the street from where I was living towards the end of college. My mom had taken me to climbing gyms when I was in high school, but, once a month or so, never enough to actually get calluses on my hands. So I never actually lasted very long. And, my first pair of climbing shoes was, 2 sizes bigger than I should have been wearing because no one likes tight shoes when they first start climbing. But I met 2 individuals at the gym that really took me under their wing as mentors and put up with me and dragged me around the gunks and taught me trad climbing. And I didn't sport climb for the first 6 years of my climbing. I was fully immersed in trad climbing. I loved every second of it. We were up there at least 2 to 3 days a week. At one point I was working a 4 10-hour day job, and Friday we would go to the gunks. We would climb all day. That night we would drive the other 3 hours up to the Adirondacks, spend 2 days climbing there, and then drive all the way back home Sunday night.
Wow.
And I did that for almost an entire year. And just to me, trad climbing was problem solving. It was really about partnerships, especially with multi-pitch climbing. It was about safety and efficiency. And to me, it was everything. Growing up with ADHD, focusing was always so hard. But with climbing, it was really easy.
Yeah.
To have that singular focus and, having ADHD, you strive for that feeling.
Yeah.
Of being able to focus. So trad climbing helped me hone that in so intensely that it was one of the very few moments during a week that I got to experience that feeling of being able to focus on one thing and one thing only.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I am so happy that in the past couple of decades, things like emotional intelligences or the multiple intelligences, as well as the different learning styles, has become more mainstream knowledge because, for, kids, being a kid can last until you're like 50, really. But being a kid, you can be a kid well into your 20s. And, what do you got to do but get your energy out, right?
Yeah, and I think we as adults, we kind of repress a lot of those childlike curiosities,
yeah,
and silliness, and we sometimes don't allow ourselves to just be fun and silly and spontaneous. But we also have, that we do have that capacity, and we also have that emotional maturity to, still do it within the confines of being safe and responsible.
Yes.
And I think that is a big part of climbing. Yes, it's a very serious thing, especially when we start talking about alpine climbing and ice climbing and more high risk activities. But there's always that room for fun and enjoyment. People talk about fun. Like type 1, type 2, type 3 fun.
Yes.
I think it's all situational. There are definitely times where I'm like, wow, okay, we're in the business. Like,
oh yeah,
this is not a time to screw around and have fun.
Right.
I've also had my partner fart on me on a belay on pitch 5, and we just laughed for probably about half an hour because it was just so darn funny.
Good tension breaker.
So I think climbing really does provide that space for us to explore all those things, childlike curiosity, as well as intense responsibility.
Absolutely. And that's another reason why I'm thrilled also that sort of alternative sports are kind of becoming more, more accessible as well, because, you can't, I'm a huge advocate of sports. And a lot of times when people hear me say that, and it's because of exactly these reasons that we're talking about: getting your energy out, having fun, being outside, finding places that connect with us and our focus abilities. And a lot of times when people hear me say that I'm an advocate for sports, they think I'm talking about ball sports automatically. And I'm like, no, I'm talking about like all of the different types of bicycle riding. I'm talking about all of the different types of climbing and adventuring, because there's a lot out there that I think has been ignored for a long time. And that kind of brings us to just the concept of stewardship a little bit, because in Climbing Magazine, I was kind of scrolling through my Instagram in the morning when I'm having my coffee, like I usually do. And I saw this question that I'm going to be bugging people about pretty soon, but it does this influx of what they were just talking about, rock climbing, from gym to crag. I mean, are we going to mentor people also with outdoor etiquette? And so from my perspective too, that has ice climbing is starting to really get some recognition and boom, because where are all of these people that have been just outdoor rock climbing for the last 10 years, where are they going to take their next level of skill sets? Right. And when you compartmentalize all of the aspects of mountaineering, ice climbing kind of comes next, as the piece of it all.
Sure. And, climbing is a wonderful sport, activity, hobby, where you want to identify with it, in that you can make it your own. You can go to the gym in Boulder, you can go outside and play around in some rocks, you can go scrambling, you can hike up a steep hill, or you can climb overhanging vertical ice. Like it's all kind of how far you want to take it. Mentorship was huge for me. I think it's the reason that I stayed with climbing for so long. I'll never forget the time that I got reamed out for building, which, in retrospect was not a safe anchor, very early in my career. And I'll never forget how upset they were, because they had taught me better. And I know that they never wanted to see anything bad happen to me.
Yeah.
And I took that so to heart that I was like, I don't want to let these people down, let alone myself. And really, that was, I think, the catalyst for studying anchors, knots, practicing things over and over, repetition, learning more, learning rescue systems, learning wilderness first aid. And that just kept that curiosity going. how can I do things better? How can I do things safer, more efficient? It's wonderful to follow some of these people on social media that are constantly posting photos of anchors, asking questions, pushing people to analyze the situation and really think about it in terms of, is this safe? Yes or no? Could it be safer? Yes or no?
Right.
So yeah, mentorship was huge for me. And I just always remember hearing that, like, gym to crag, how do we really be stewards for younger generations, or even just people who are new to the sport? How do we really teach them to stay on the trail? Don't go off trail. Don't poop in the woods where people might interact with it. Like little things like that, all the way to really safe trad climbing and alpine climbing techniques and methods, let alone just how to properly belay someone.
Yes, absolutely.
Or spot someone bouldering.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because I think that a lot of the times it's, it is, like you said, how we personally identify with it. So if, one climber thinks of rock climbing or climbing in general as just their athletic workout, then, they might not necessarily, think about using a multi-use water container or staying on the trail or something like that, because they probably don't go out into the woods. But there's, I think, a bare minimum, that people can adhere to. And so when you do group up with people that are more used to heading to the crag for a weekend or something like that, they're going to, just by nature, I think, can communicate those sorts of things like, we don't bolt here, or, we don't throw trash on the ground, or we, kind of try to practice leave no trace. And, some people will go through NOLS training or wilderness first aid, courses and stuff. But if you are simply, a gym climber so that you can get your workout in, because it is a heck of a lot of fun. It's a real, and it is hard work too, then you're probably not going to go for that. So I think mentorship is really fantastic. And another thing I came across when I was scrolling this morning was Petzl had kind of a step-by-step, how to make a Clove hitch, which I thought was fantastic. And so Valdez Adventure Alliance also put out a little, like, how do you choose your own carabiner educational video, because if you're, used to buying something like this guy, from like can you even see that? From the gas station, maybe you're going to hook your keys to it or whatever. This obviously is not, going to hold 22 kilonewtons or whatever, like a regular carabiner. And what's a locking gate and all of those things. I mean, it can get pretty complicated. So, and speaking of technical things, if you don't have anything else to add to that stuff, you want to tell us a little bit about why Lowa Boots are so amazing?
Oh, how much time do we have? No,
there's a lot of different products that Lowa comes out with. So, I mean, sticking with, I think, things that would be handy, because it's confusing. I mean, when I'm looking at which crampons am I going to buy and what boots are they going to fit, I mean, it is a lot of information out there.
There is. And, choosing the wrong trail runner, not really the biggest deal.
Right.
Choosing the wrong crampon or mountaineering boot does, there are situations where it becomes a safety issue.
Oh, yeah.
And
you don't want to find out. You don't want to find out when you're a day into your hike.
Well, I'll never forget the funny story of Alex Honnold and Tom Caldwell going to Patagonia, and he brought the wrong crampons. And you're sitting there going, how did that happen?
That's what I was wondering.
How did one of the best rock climbers who's ever lived,
right,
and one of the most accomplished climbers in the world,
how did they overlook
the wrong? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's just like when Sonny dropped him and didn't have a knot at the end of his rope, because the rope went through the belay tool. So why was there no knot there? Yeah, exactly. Things happen. And I think that there's the lesson right there, is if the super pro can do it, then anybody can do it.
So For me, what makes Lowa Boots so amazing? Backing up, when I worked at a gear store, I always thought that one day, if I was going to work for like a company, I would only want to work for the best. I never wanted to be able to look at another company and say, wow, they do something so much better than us. I really wish my company could do that. And when the opportunity to work for Lowa came along, I was just ecstatic. Just their history, their quality, everything we do is sourced and manufactured in Europe. We are the only 9001 ISO rated outdoor footwear company, which is Europe's highest standard for quality of manufacturing. The technical aspects and the design and the engineering and the materials that go into our boots, it just blows me away every time they come out with something new. And, there are definitely other companies out there that make excellent products. In the same realm, in the mountaineering world, La Sportiva, Scarpa, they make excellent products, no doubt. Great quality manufacturing. In fact, the La Sportiva factory is about 2 blocks away from the factory in Montebluna, Italy, where we make our mountaineering boots. I think Scarpa is actually on the same block as well. But what it really comes down to is, for us, is fit. Our boots are going to be a little bit wider and higher volume than some of the other European brands. So really, it comes down to does a Lowa fit you? If not, there are plenty of other really great products out there. I love the company. I love the leadership that we have here in the U.S. because we're just the U.S. Distributor here. Mm-hmm. And I've been over to the European factories, and my thoughts of like what a footwear factory were completely shattered when I walked into this pristinely clean manufacturing floor.
Wow.
It was really cool to see that. But we make tons of products, everything from synthetic light hiking boots all the way up to high altitude 8,000 meter boots. And
so how does one choose
a particular boot?
Yeah, like take me through the rundown. And then also, when you are talking about mountaineering and alpine climbing or ice climbing, there are automatic crampons, semi-automatic crampons. So if you want, we could start kind of from the top down. Sure. and see what happens.
Sure. So I guess if we start at the top, we've got our Expedition 8000 and our Expedition 6000. Okay. Those numbers refer to the altitude that they're designed for.
Gotcha.
So 8,000 meter peaks, 6,000 meter peaks. And that really just takes into consideration the weather and the temperatures that you encounter at those altitudes. Mm-hmm. Expedition gear, you always want to plan for the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And hope for the best case scenario. Because again, it does turn into a safety issue then.
It does.
The gear that you would use in ideal conditions might not save your life in the worst conditions.
Right. Very important.
So we've got those two. Those are both double boots with removable linings.
Oh, nice.
Primaloft insulation, as well as Duratherm insulation, which is a Gore product. Mm-hmm. And then we have our Alpine Ice, which is a 1.5 boot. So it's got an integrated gaiter, does not have a removable bootie.
And that's a 1.5 boot. What does that even mean?
So 1.5 boot is going to be a boot with an integrated gaiter. So it has an inner boot. It's got a gaiter that zips up on the outside, but that inner boot isn't removable. It's part of the boot as a whole.
Gotcha.
And then we've got the new Alpine Expert for men and women. And that's a leather boot. It's got 400 grams of Primaloft insulation. And the thing that we did different, we used to make something called the Mountain Expert, and we kind of updated it, and now it's the Alpine Expert. We made the toe box a little bit wider, and we doubled the amount of insulation.
Okay. And then what kind of crampons would you recommend for those 3 different styles that you talked about?
So those 4 that I just mentioned are all automatic crampon compatible.
Okay.
So they have a heel and a toe shelf. So any rigid, fully automatic crampon will work on those.
Awesome.
Then we've got a number of non-insulated boots that are all combination crampon compatible.
Okay.
And those are all going to be, for warmer, milder conditions, but where you still might need to put a crampon on for glacier travel or steep snow.
Sure.
So spring cool bars or glacier travel up in the Wind River Range, summer trekking in Alaska, things like that.
Yeah. Because those glaciers are still there. There is still plenty of snow. As a matter of fact, the snowmobile group is they're already going out and exploring. So yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I always like to say, buy a boot based on, what you're planning on encountering or what you might encounter.
Yes.
So even if you are doing summer mountaineering, but you're like, man, I really want to get into cold weather sports like ice climbing and mountaineering, get that insulated boot up front. Yes, it's going to be a little bit warm in the summer. You might wear just a really thin sock. You might have to change socks a few times.
Yeah.
But for people who are getting into the sport, mountaineering and climbing in general is not a cheap sport.
Right.
Not a cheap activity to get into. Bouldering, great. You get a chalk bag and a pair of shoes.
Right.
Cool. It's like running. You get a pair of shoes and a water bottle. Go. But as you get further and further and deeper into these activities and their branching kind of trajectories and where you can go with them, an ice climbing setup, boots, crampons, ice tools, helmet, harness, ice screws, it's not an inexpensive sport to get into. So I always like to say, instead of trying to buy like 3 different pairs of boots, just maybe start with 1 pair of boot that's going to be versatile and take you kind of in the different levels that you want to achieve. That's the same thing with a hiking or a backpacking boot. If you are getting into hiking or because you really want to go like hike the Camino de Santiago like next year, well, don't buy a light hiker this year. Get that boot that you're going to take with you. Maybe a trekking boot that is going to last you for years, as opposed to buying a boot now and then like upgrading and then upgrading again. I actually learned this with brewing beer. Because I started with a little 5-gallon pot.
Yes.
It might have even been like a 3-gallon pot, and I was doing 1-gallon batches.
Wow.
And then I bought a 7, and then I bought an 8. When I should have just bought that 8 at the beginning.
Right. You can always put less in there. Yeah. I had a 5-gallon carboy when I used to brew beer. Yeah. A 5-gallon glass carboy that I had gotten from the Kentwood, Louisiana Spring Water Company. I think we even stole them at the time. Those and like the crates that they would come in. We're like, empty carboy. All right, grab 2 of them, run away, push our shopping cart down the street or whatever. But that was
so
time
ago. So I really think that, when choosing a boot, plan for the future.
Yes. Good advice. Because it is an investment. And then also those things will last you potentially a lifetime. And I think I told you the story about when I was in the San Juan Mountains hiking around, I had a pair of Basque Sundowners. It's one nice leather body, and they had, it was, Gore-Tex on the inside. And I was walking in and an older lady, I mean, she looked great, but I think she was probably like 75 or something. She looked at my boots. She goes, "Hey, nice boots." And I looked at her boots. I was like, "Oh, nice boots." I was like, those look brand new. Are you just checking them out here, because you live here? Do you live here? Or are you visiting or whatever? And she's like, no, I've had the same boot for like 50 years or whatever. I just had them resoled over and over again. The leather just fits me like a glove. I was like, heck yeah, man. I was like, I went through all of you got to break those in a little bit. They don't just naturally fit when you first get them, but they form to your feet So that was really sweet. And then I ended up gifting those boots to a younger, new mountain adventurer. So I'm sure they're out there somewhere.
And that is, I think that's also part of the stewardship conversation is maximizing the life of your gear.
Yeah.
We have a resoling service where we send boots back to the factory in Germany.
Neat.
And they will put a new outsole, midsole, rubber band, insoles, shoelaces. They'll clean and recondition the leather.
Love it.
So, boots are an investment. They're going to be with you for years. I do a lot of customer service questions and warranties. And I definitely understand when people get upset if their boots break because they have memories with them.
Yes.
I actually feel that way about some of my climbing harnesses. I've got a climbing harness that I won't climb on anymore. But I just can't bring myself to throw it away. I can think of the thousands of feet that I've climbed in that thing. All the places that I've gone with it. Like I keep looking at it like it is an old friend. You don't want to get rid of it. But yeah, it's like 15 years old. I got it secondhand from a friend, and I don't know that I really want to climb on it again. It's a little crispy.
Right. Yeah. Do you personally ice climb also and go up into some mountains for adventuring?
I do. I started ice climbing about 3 years into my rock climbing career. The two mentors that I mentioned, Kevin and Tim, they were talking about ice climbing, and God, I just bugged them so much to take me out. Like, I want to know what this thing is about. So they finally said, okay. And I borrowed a pair of size 9.5 Clove flax. Was it the Arctic X-Bay ones, or I don't know, whatever those yellow ones that Coflax made were. I'm a size 11.5, so there were two sizes too small. Oh, I had a pair of Old Navy fleece pants under a set of rain pants.
Nice.
I had an Old Navy fleece top with a Gore-Tex Pack Light jacket over it, and a hand-me-down hard plastic helmet. I froze my butt off for 3 days up there, and I loved every single second of it.
Why is that? Why does that happen? I mean, in a sense, a lot of this is like we are torturing ourselves, and then you walk away from it and it's like the best experience ever.
To me, in the moment, being there, climbing ice with wind whipping sideways, the snow was spin drifts coming down on me. It was just dumping gasoline on my yearning for adventure. Like, I was just out of my mind, excited to be there, to be doing this wild thing that I didn't know anything about before. And here I am swinging ice tools into ice and kicking into and pulling myself up. And again, the camaraderie, the joint suffering with your other partners. It was just such an adventure for me, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
I was absolutely hooked. And I wore those Coflax boots for probably 2 years, those two size too small boots, because I couldn't afford boots.
Yeah.
I was borrowing these from someone else. And man, it caught my attention, and I just loved it. And I continued to ice climb in the winter, rock climb in the summer. And then in 2015, I kind of got the bug to climb a big mountain.
Okay.
So I went down to Peru and climbed Mount Pisco, which isn't really a technical mountain. It's kind of a long hike up a mountain, but our base camp was at 14,000 feet, and we topped out at 18,009. That was a really cool adventure, to be that far from home, that high up in the air. It was a pretty emotional experience for me.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, to kind of think that some kid from New Jersey who, was, I don't know, I wasn't into sports. Like, my parents tried to put me in soccer, baseball. I was like, what are these rules? I just want to go play. Like, I didn't do well with team sports, which is like one of the things that I think attracted me so much to climbing. But when I got up on top of that mountain, it kind of hit me like, I did this. I trained for this. I got the gear for this. I don't think I ever, maybe as a kid, I always thought like, you see some of these mountaineering movies, like what was that, Vertical Limit? These kind of ridiculous films that
they are made, funny. Yes.
I was like, wow, like this was a big accomplishment.
No, it is. And as a matter of fact, I mean, even if your base camp is at 14,000 feet, then, you would have to acclimate, a lot just to hang out at base camp. So,
and I was living in Connecticut at the time. So, my house was probably 100 feet above sea level, maybe. The Long Island Sound was right down the road from me.
Gotcha.
But I was doing a lot of triathlon training at that time. Okay. So my cardio was pretty high. I was running a lot, swimming a lot, riding my bike a ton. So I was in pretty good shape. And I didn't know how I was going to deal with altitude. The highest really I'd been was hiking up and down Bear Mountain with a pack on my back. And that's 1,000 feet. And that goes right down to the Hudson River. So
yeah,
it's not that much elevation. I did surprisingly well. A couple people on our trip got pretty sick at base camp and were not able to summit. I was really lucky that my body acclimated well. I heeded all the warnings of not drinking the water, only drinking bottled water, things of that sort. Working on lots of breathing techniques while we were up there. And we did a little kind of test hike. We hiked up to 16,000 feet to see how we were doing. I felt good. And I was pretty confident the next morning when we went for the summit.
Yeah.
And I got to say, the air is thin up there.
Whew. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you take like 3 steps and I was like, whoa. Like big breaths. And then when we finally got to the summit, it almost felt like you didn't even notice it. I was just so overcome with elation that the concept of the fact that I was almost at 19,000 feet above sea level didn't even occur to me anymore. It was such a great feeling.
Yeah.
And that was also really strange. Descending, we were all down to our t-shirts because that sun is strong at that elevation. And that was a really cool adventure. I definitely didn't get bitten by the bug of high altitude mountaineering.
Okay. What was the terrain like when you were going up? How did it change from this town that you started in or whatever to base camp and then 18,000?
So we landed in Lima, took the bus to Huaraz. And Huaraz itself is, I think, at like 8,000 or 9,000 feet above sea level.
Okay.
I could be wrong there, but I know it's pretty high up there. And it's interesting, Peru is a really amazing country. Lima is certainly like a first world country city. But you get outside of Lima and it turns into a second and third world country pretty quickly. There's a lot of poverty, a lot of rundown housing establishments. Huaraz is a really nice little town. Certainly I wouldn't call it a first world country town, but we, as we went up higher, we went up into the Huascarán National Park, and I'll never forget driving in there. You're essentially kind of like in a rainforest almost. Like it's humid, it's hot, it's incredibly lush, and you're looking up at these dead vertical rock walls on either side of the valley with just water, running down them. And every so often you catch a peak of just this little white thing like that's behind it in the distance. And then you come into this valley that is green and lush and filled with cows grazing. And tons of just streams running everywhere from all the glacial melt. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then we started hiking up, got to see some vegetation that I've never seen before, these, gigantic wild cactus. And then we got up to our base camp at 14,000 and it was just a giant field and there were more cows. So this giant open field there with grass that was, kept very low by all the grazing animals. We camped there. And as soon as we started getting above that, it turned into a completely alien landscape. Just scree, rock, completely arid, dry, very obvious avalanche paths that had come through, or glacial recession paths.
Interesting.
It was a very different world from where it had been the day before.
That's beautiful.
It was dry. The air was thin. It was cold, but it was hot because that sun is beating down on you, but the air has a chill to it. And just above 16,000 is where the ice and glaciers start. So in the middle of the night when we were heading up there, you go from rock, and then all of a sudden it's snow and ice immediately. And then you're in a world of white. You are just in a quiet world of thin air with the distant rumbles of like small avalanches and rockfall in the distance. Wow. It was a surreal environment for me. And I could definitely see how people are entranced and enamored by these alien landscapes. After that trip, I was like, I could definitely see myself doing like Denali or something, but thinking about doing some like the big 8,000 meter peaks, I kind of said, I'm gonna let other people do that. That might not be for me.
Right.
Because as much as I love to adventure, I gotta say, I like being at home. I like my couch. I like my cats. Gotcha. And the idea of flying halfway across the world and being in that alien landscape for a month, 2 months, in a constant state of being slightly uncomfortable, that was just a little bit much for me. And I know people who excel in that environment, mentally, physically. I think it takes a certain type of person to really excel in those environments.
I love it.
To really be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Once you hit the snow area too, was it more vertical?
No, it was actually, Pisco is a pretty low angle mountain.
Gotcha.
There were a couple steep sections, but it was very short and you kind of just have your POA, nothing vertical and technical.
Right. And it sounds like you were with a guide group?
Yes. Being that I was at my first time in a foreign country like that, where I didn't speak the language, my Spanish is minimal to none. It was nice to go with a group that was guided, that was able to get us around, and without any real glacial travel experience. I'd read it in Freedom of the Hills.
I have that.
But of course, I think it's a standard for most people that go and play in the mountains.
Yeah.
I'd seen the photos of glacier travel and how to tie a butterfly knot and how to zigzag and avoid avalanche terrain, but reading about it just barely scratches the surface compared to the real experience. So really grateful that I went with a guide. I had a really good experience and I got a lot of knowledge from that trip that I definitely feel like I could take with me to other mountains. But
it's just, that's not your thing. And
exactly. And that's what we were kind of talking about earlier, is that climbing, you get to make it your own.
Yes.
There are lots of people who mountaineer that have no interest in rock climbing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They just want to hike uphill for days on end.
Well, and descend, because descending is really, depending, the most dangerous part of it all.
Yeah, I believe the majority of accidents, as reported by the American Alpine Club in their accident reports, majority of accidents happen on the descent.
Yeah.
I believe the old adage is getting up is optional, getting home is mandatory.
Yeah. 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 And no, I think too that it's definitely a different kind of commitment. And like you said, it's the day after day after day of maybe being slightly uncomfortable, and so it's a different thing all to itself. And I love it that, I mean, humans have been trekking and adventuring since there have been humans, but we're at this point where we're I think someone had organized, what it is to be an adventurer, what it is to be an explorer, what it is to be a mountaineer, and then breaking down the little bits and pieces of it. This is bouldering, this is rock climbing, this is ice climbing, this is, even just hiking, really, because through hiking also, and having that experience of carrying that, much less than carrying those pounds. I mean, we're talking about sometimes upwards of 60, 80, 100 pounds.
Hopefully not if you're through hiking.
Yeah, I think my backpack, the heaviest it's ever gotten was 60 pounds. But I think that's because girl, height, those sorts of things. So I can only guess that guys end up taking on more.
Possibly. I went up to actually, so I want to back up real quick.
Sure.
Talking about adventure,
Yes.
Being explorers and adventurers as kind of an innate human trait. And I think it's sad to see when some people lose that perspective and kind of get stuck behind a desk and go home and watch their Netflix and do that day in, day out. Adventure is a personal thing. I've always loved teaching clinics for, say, inner city groups that, God, the statistics of kids who live in Denver that have never been to Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yes.
It's high.
Yes.
It's too high. But so for them, going on a hike, that's an adventure. For someone who was lucky enough to have parents who took us on hikes, and I was involved in Boy Scouts all the way through Eagle, hiking and camping was just another thing that you did.
Right.
So to me, that next step was the adventure part. Traveling abroad, or actually just rock climbing and, sleeping in dirt, next to your car. That was an adventure. That was so incremental adventures, I think, until we hit our limit, our comfort, until we kind of either surpass our comfort zone and say, let's go back. Let's dial that back. And
sure. I hate to say that we take it for granted, but when I came from Chicago, and if you've ever seen a map of the city of Chicago,
I've been there.
Yeah. So you know how it's just long, and it's just kind of long along the coast of Lake Michigan, but it's not wide. So, I mean, you are, not very many miles at any given point from the lake. So I used to work at the Peace Museum. I was a volunteer internee person there when I was in high school, and little kids from Cabrini Green would come in. They had never been to Lake Michigan. As a matter of fact, they were even afraid to go to Michigan Avenue, but go past Michigan Avenue and get to the lakes right there, but they had never, ever been to Lake Michigan. And I was like, what are you even talking about? I'm going to take you. Let's go after work. It's amazing.
Wow. Let alone thinking that, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan isn't that far away. And we've got the Michigan Ice Festival there.
Yes.
And I teach there, I have for the last couple of years. And I think that is one festival where, because I do the Michigan, Ouray, and Bozeman Ice Festivals every year. I think the Michigan one is the one festival where we get the most first-time climbers.
Okay. Nice.
And it's amazing. It's just so great to share that.
Yeah.
So going back to our talk about mentorship, like that's an adventure for me, is sharing that knowledge and teaching. And knowing that I had great mentors that imparted safety and correct ways of doing things, and I get to pass that on.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that.
And
what
to
do you
me,
teach? You're teaching beginner, intro to ice, that sort of thing?
Yeah, how to swing your tools, how to not put your crampon through your, pants.
Yeah, don't step on your rope.
Yeah, don't step on your rope, how to keep your rope out of the snow, little things. Yeah. Little hacks. One of my favorites is, and this was taught to me by a friend, is don't bring coffee or tea with you, because you're just going to have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Bring
chicken broth.
Smart.
It's warm. It's got protein. It's got calories. It's got electrolytes.
Yes. That's salt.
Chicken broth while ice climbing.
That's fantastic. It'll hydrate you and keep you warm, and sustenance all at the same time. Cool.
Yes. So,
what about for vegans? What are vegans going to do?
Vegetable broth.
Vegetable broth. There you go. Yeah.
So, life really is a choose your own adventure.
Yeah. I love that.
And I think it's important to not lose sight of that, and to continuously fuel that childhood curiosity. And don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. People ask me, hey, would I like ice climbing? I'm like, are you okay being cold and slightly miserable all day? Because if the answer is yes, then you're going to love ice climbing. If the answer is no, go ski.
Yeah.
It's not a comfortable sport.
Right.
Your toes and your fingers are probably going to get cold.
Yeah.
There's a good chance ice is going to hit you in the face and cut you.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a heck of a time trying to go to the bathroom with all those layers and harness on. But if you're okay with that, the pure joy of sinking an ice axe into a pillar of ice and progressing upwards, whether you're on top rope or lead, it doesn't matter. That joy, I think, is there with every swing.
Nice.
Love it. Until the screaming barfies come, and then it just all goes out the window. So I guess maybe for some people who are listening that don't know what the screaming barfies are,
please explain.
If you ice climb, you will inevitably experience them at some point. It is a result of often over gripping your ice tools, having your hands above your heart for an extended period of time, cold temperatures and lactic acid buildup. And then when you release and bring those arms below your heart, that warm blood and lactic acid explodes into your forearms and you want to scream and barf. It is an intense pain. I've hurt myself over the years, just playing.
Sure.
Screaming barfies is the one type of pain that I can actually remember.
Interesting.
That feeling is seared into the back of my head because it is intense. And it's funny. It always happens. I don't know that you're ever prepared for it. And honestly, all you can do is let your friends laugh at you because it happens to all of us. It's horrible. It's going to pass. It's not going to kill you. And it's inevitable. And when it happens,
yes,
woo, it is. It's different. It's a different experience. And it's a very unique experience, I think, to ice climbing.
So if you're really into suffering, this is the Sufferfest of Sufferfests. Must join the ice climbing festival of some sort. Yes.
I always say, give it a try. Get on top rope. Just go for it. Give it a swing. You might surprise yourself that you might like it.
One of my old triathlon coaches used to say, if you're not throwing up or feeling like you're going to throw up by the end of the race, you didn't work hard enough. So I don't know if that's good advice or bad advice.
And I hate those sentiments because it's telling you that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
If you can finish a triathlon,
oh my God,
3 hours after everyone else, awesome. You did it. You finished. Good for you. You did it on your own terms. You did it how you wanted to do it.
Yes.
Because I think pushing yourself to that point where you're no longer having fun has completely negated the entire point of doing it.
Well, I'm not going to lie. Screaming barfies does not sound like any more fun. You're not selling it. I just want to let you know.
It passes.
Everybody who wanted to come are now like, how do I get a refund? We need to go to the beach or something. You have a cocktail, watch Netflix.
You know, and if that's your idea of an adventure, go for it.
Yeah. I'm thinking not, I'm thinking not, but also triathlon, like climbing, it's very personal. I mean, this is when I started understanding what a PR was, you know what I mean? And everything having to do with it being a race against yourself or a personal journey or personal record, I mean, that's really, where a lot of this sport is at,
And that was something that I learned or was told when I was doing triathlon training, was that it was an individual sport. And I didn't get it at first. And then I was like, I get it. You're always competing against yourself.
Yeah.
Because tries are not easy.
No.
They take a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of prep. I remember I used to go running at night, because just the heat and the humidity in the summer on the East Coast was too much. So 10:30 at night, I'd put on my shoes and go run 8 miles.
Wow.
And I got to say that some of those nights I actually have very fond memories of. And this is also, this kind of got me into night climbing, rock climbing at night.
Interesting.
And then ice climbing at night. When you have a headlamp on, your world shrinks.
Yeah.
To just what's in front of you. And once you get like past mile 7, 8, 9, things just disappear. And what's right in front of you, the road in front of you, that's all that matters. That next arm stroke when you're swimming, like, it's really amazing to be able to push everything else out. And I think a headlamp really accentuates that, when your world shrinks down to just what that beam of light is hitting. And then when you're running in the cold and all you see is your breath in that headlamp. And I think that's a really interesting physical way of actually connecting with your breath, is to physically see it. And that's something that I think also happens, when you are ice climbing and you're in those cold environments. And then you're ice climbing, you're in the winter. The sun sets pretty early. It's pretty easy to get stuck outside in the dark. And those moments where your world shrinks, I think are really incredible, intimate moments with yourself.
For sure. Yeah. No, it's lovely. Have you ever heard of or been to 24-Hour Horseshoe Hell?
I've been to Horseshoe Canyon Ranch, but I have not been to that event.
It's pretty cool.
I've always said one day I would go. I know a few people that have gone that have their little horseshoe tattoos, and it looks like a wild, raucous party.
It's really fun. And you know what I love about it too, is that when you're leaving, it's pristine. Like, all of these people that have come and they're wearing frickin' tutus and body paint and glitter bikinis, they freaking pick up after themselves, man. I did not see, I can't tell you how many triathlons I've been to where people take their goo pack and throw it on the ground, and I yell at them. Well, I used to anyway, but there was zero trash on the ground after all of that raucous partying that I saw. They did a great job. Yeah. And all of the campers were just fantastic.
Stewardship and environmental responsibility is a huge part of what we need to accept and undertake as climbers at any level, whether that is being a boulderer and not leaving your trash around, being a trad climber, a multi-pitch trad climber, and having a wag bag with you.
Yeah.
High altitude mountaineering,
Did you see black ice? Have you seen Real Raw 15 yet?
No, I have not yet.
The dude in black ice is like, man, they gave me this wag bag because I don't want to go in that porta-john over there, though. What was it? It was an outhouse. He didn't want to go in.
Hey, wag bags are pretty clean. But I think about like all the controversies and issues of the trash left at base camps at big mountains.
Yes, it's heartbreaking.
Well, it's mind-boggling when they start to measure the amount of trash in tons, not pounds.
Yeah.
Oxygen canisters, things of that sort. You know, it's not as romantic as I think a lot of us would like it to be.
And it's our fault.
There's dead bodies and trash and human waste. And, you know, when I heard about that, I was like, I have no interest in going to Everest Base Camp. That sounds terrible.
Right.
That does not sound like an adventure. That just sounds like, I don't know, a selfish pursuit.
Right. And this is, I think, our next step in the journey is how can we improve this sort of thing? And it really has to come from leaders in the outdoor exploration industry, because a lot of the times it is a pursuit of vanity, but then a lot of the times it is, it's kind of like a next step in a journey, a typical journey of the very few people that are making this their life pursuit, kind of like going to college. You know what I'm saying? It's an education. And hopefully folks that do experience this, that, like I was saying, it's even with sport climbers or indoor rock climbers, is it an athletic thing for you? Is this your workout, or is this something that it's raining outside, so you can't go to the crag, so you're, subbing out the crag for, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Are you an outdoors person, or is this just vanity? So hopefully people that are on the outdoor exploration side of it are taking those principles and figuring out ways to improve something like those big mountain expeditions, because honestly, think about how much money those Sherpas are making, or even the guides in Peru. Granted, maybe their standard of living might be different, but I mean, it's ridiculous when you think about that, their standard of living, their average annual income, and what they get for that. What's a gallon of milk over there, so.
As adventurers and explorers and travelers, I guess I always love the phrase, be a traveler, not a tourist.
Yeah.
Respecting local culture anywhere you go is important. Sure. If I go to anywhere, even in the US, you have to be respectful of everyone, no matter where you go, no matter where you are, and understand that, once you leave your little bubble, your little safe zone, not everyone thinks the same way that you do. And you need to respect that as well. Local customs, local practices. And that could be everything from traveling abroad and having to respect local customs, religious observances, Native American sacred land observances, all the way down to, how do you sip your tea? Because you don't want to offend someone, or how do you sip your soup? So I think it's really important for us as climbers, if we are using climbing as a reason to travel the world, or even travel the country, is we have to respect the land and the people. Otherwise, it could be taken away from us. I think some of the things that we've seen where climbing areas had to be closed because of over traffic, trash, too much access, overuse. Maybe you go to that crag that's a little bit further. We don't all have to be on top of each other, sharing the same space, leaving trash. So it is about respect. Respect for your fellow climber, respect for the next person that's going to use that space or that land, and respect for the people who have protected that land for centuries or generations. So I think when you talk about Horseshoe Canyon Ranch, I believe it's a family that owns that ranch. And you got to be respectful of all the climbers that are going to come next weekend or the next day, and the land stewards that, this is their land, that's meaningful. And I think for people who live in apartments or condo complexes, land ownership is kind of a foreign concept. But I think once you have that concept of like, you are responsible for this certain section of the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that bigger picture can really instill that necessity for respect.
I like it.
And stewardship and, mentorship.
Sure. And just random acts of kindness. I love the way that we're like trying to solve the world's problems by having this conversation about just something that we love to do. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, I appreciate all of your time, and thank you so much for joining me in this conversation today. So,
thank you, Michelle.
Yeah. So, looking forward to staying in touch with you, and big plans for the rest of the day. More work.
Work, and it's Friday, so
yeah. Have a great Friday.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, this will be released next Tuesday. So just so that you know, FYI, and I can send you a link when we put it out there after it goes through a little bit of editing and all that good stuff. Thanks for chatting today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your day, Christian.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again for listening to LoTech Tuesdays by LoTech and Wild. This podcast supports Valdez Adventure Alliance up in Valdez, Alaska, where they strongly believe in nature therapy. Their goal is to bring this to those who will appreciate it, one might say those who need it. Their focus is teaching through play. They are strong encouragers. The events and resources that they provide will help people find the satisfaction of self-accomplishment through effort, of climbing, of riding bikes, of hiking, of trail building, of immersing in nature. They encourage people to allow themselves to surrender to the flow of the vast beauty of those mountains and the Prince William Sound. Their objective is to be a resource for people to find deep happiness and healthy outlets for themselves in these ever-trying times. We would like to shout out to some of the Valdez Adventure sponsors, including IMBA, International Mountain Biking Association, Access Fund, Protecting America's Climbing, and the American Alpine Club. Some local sponsors include the City of Valdez, the CVEA Community Foundation, Alyeska Pipeline, the Fat Mermaid, the Prospector, Valdez Avalanche Center, Raven, Alaska. We'd also like to give a big shout out to Lowa Boots, Tiger Tail, Hyperlight, the National Scenic Byway Foundation, Mountain Equipment, RAB, and Nick Wax. Thanks again for listening, and enjoy your day.